Hello there, and welcome back to Gathering Folds. I'm Madonna Yoder, and today we're going to be talking about advanced wraps. So these are the crease patterns for the beginner wraps that I covered in a video 3 weeks ago, and today we're going to be looking at more advanced variations. I'll start with the compound wrap, and we'll take a look at what happens if these two pleats that are feeding in together are not the same size, if there's different distances between the mountain and valley folds. So we'll start off, and I'm going to draw on, actually I'll go ahead and just fold on a single depth pleat crossed by a double depth pleat. And when we do this, if we look just at the pleat overlap, you can see when I open it up that double depth pleat has jumped down one grid spacing. And I'm going to draw in all of these folds, and we'll see the same reaction to hitting the single depth pleat after the compound wrap. So everything outside of this area is going to stay the same, but inside here we're going to do something a little bit different. So instead of letting the single depth pleat fully close and have the double depth pleat close over it, we're going to pop this point where the two pleats meet down and pop these points where the two pleats meet. And really it's both those points are popping down and both of these points are popping up. And we get our pleat intersection, or a compound wrap, that has this little parallelogram in the middle that's rotating around as it folds over. And good morning, Nancy. Glad to see you here. So that's what this wrap is doing. Next, let's look at how it works. So if I have a single depth pleat first, I clip that into place, and I want to run this double depth pleat through here. One thing I can do is this pleat that's on top, I can use those mountain and valley folds that are further out as a guide and say, okay, hey, that has to be where the new folds go. But the other thing that I'm doing, the more generalized thing, is saying, okay, I'm bringing my valley until it hits the mountain of the next pleat. There's going to be a 60-degree angle between these two. That's how I know that it's a compound wrap instead of a triangle wrap. The triangle wrap has 120 degrees. And if it's 180 degrees, well, they're parallel and you don't need to wrap anything. And those are the angle options on a triangle grid. So I'm bringing my valley until it hits this other mountain fold, and I'm mirroring. I'm bouncing over the mountain fold until I hit the valley fold. And then I'm bouncing again and heading off towards the edge of the paper. So I can use that to set up my compound wrap. Now that's the perspective if you do the single depth pleat first. But what if you have the double depth pleat first? If I have that double depth pleat and I'm running this single depth pleat into the area, you'll notice that unlike the normal compound wrap, I'm not just going one space out, I'm going two spaces out. and then popping down one space and sending my mountain down and in. So I can use the same heuristic of, oh, hey, I need to have the valley underneath bounce, and then the distance that it comes out is the distance between the mountain and valley of the pleat on top, and the distance it comes down is the distance between the mountain and valley of the pleat on the bottom. So let's take this scenario and flip it and have a double depth pleat, and seeing where is a good spot to put this on the paper, have a double depth pleat come in this direction, and a single depth pleat come in this direction. And again, I'll draw those pleats in place. So now we have the opposite orientation. And you'll notice this time the pleat on top got offset by 2 spaces. That's because the pleat that went through first has 2 spaces between mountain and valley folds. So this one, again, we're following that same heuristic of we hit the mountain of the next pleat with our valley fold, we bounce, we hit the valley of that pleat, and bounce again. So for our mountains, we're hitting this fold, we're bouncing, and we've got these 2 little helper folds in here to get everything settled in place. And that can lay down flat. So why would we be doing these wraps? Well, it's to set up twists that are on the opposite side of the paper and decrease the level of stuckness. So here, if I fold these layers through as an overlap, I've got layers stuck together all the way back in here. But if I wrap, then I've got free space to fold whatever I would like. Like, let's say I'm putting in a double open triangle, or even let's say an open triangle twist right here. I can go ahead and fold that whole triangle twist, even with the corner sticking out over the incoming double depth pleat. So that's why we want to use these wraps. They just make it a lot easier to fold these tessellations. So I'll go through with this one like I did in the previous one. What if I have the double depth pleat fixed in place? Imagine there's some twist over here that's holding that in place. And then I want to run this single depth pleat through, and I want to do the wrap. So I come in, my valley fold hits the mountain of the next pleat, and I bounce and hit the valley down below, bounce again, let the mountain follow 1 grid space away, and there we go. So this time, let's say that our single depth pleat is in place first, and our double depth pleat is being folded in, and I want to do a wrap here instead of an overlap. I'm going to open up, I'm going to find where that valley hit, let it bounce, comes down to the valley below, bounce again, and there's the wrap. So that's the compound wraps with single and double depth pleats. Now there's also triangle wraps with single and double depth pleats. You'll notice there's two versions of this one. There's also going to be two versions of the triangle wraps. I'll flip the paper over so we have more space to draw. With the triangle wraps, these are going to be ones where the angle between pleats is 120 degrees. So let's say we've got this double depth pleat being crossed at 120 degrees by a single depth pleat. These are the fixed ends. That's how you know which angle to measure. The one between the fixed ends. And I want to do a wrap here. So with the triangle wrap, and so I'll go ahead and draw in my mountains and valleys. With the triangle wrap, my valley coming in, when it hits the mountain of the next pleat, it does not bounce. It keeps going straight until it hits the valley below, at which point it makes a three-way intersection. And the mountain is going to follow and have a three-way intersection one grid spacing away. But the problem here is that I'm crossing a double depth pleat, and so I've only sent one grid spacing worth of this double depth pleat out this way. There's still another grid spacing worth going out in the original direction. So with this wrap, I have some additional things going on. I have a valley going out this way, a mountain going out parallel, and let's see, I never draw these out, so I need to actually see where those folds are hitting. Okay, so that's just one valley fold in here. So where would this show up? Well, the clue is in the crow's foot. Got two spaces here coming into three pleats spread apart. This is a wrap for a trapezoid twist. And then we can play our usual game of, okay, basically the way that I set it up is if we have the double depth pleat already in place and we want to bring in the single depth pleat, that's going to have the valley come down, hit the valley down below, make that three-way intersection, the mountain follows, and then I resolve whatever tension is left in the paper. If instead the single depth pleat was in place first, and we're running this double depth pleat in, then we're actually going to do something really similar, which is we're going to find where the valley of the single depth pleat meets the valley of the double depth pleat, find our three-way intersection, and then this top mountain is going to require another pleat off this way. So I'm going through all of these permutations to help demonstrate how these look from different perspectives, because you're always running into them in slightly different ways, but the same principles apply. So, and this is going to tie back into Ben Parker's theory of twist archetypes, where you want to have the shrinkage balanced as you work your way around a interaction of pleats so that everything can lay down flat. And in this case, we know that a triangle is balanced, and then there's an additional pleat added, and a single pleat is balanced. And you can add these balanced components to make a balanced whole. So that was with single depth coming over double depth. Let's take a look at the opposite scenario of I've got a single depth pleat, and again, I'm going to rotate to give myself some more space. And I've got a double depth pleat coming over. So now, when we do the wrap, there will be a pleat heading out this way, but there will still be a pleat heading this way as well, because that double depth only shifts one of the two spacings into the triangle wrap, and the other continues straight. So I'm gonna have my mountain and valley and valley. These are the fixed directions, so that's the angle that I'm interested in. We're going to send this valley down to the bottom where it will make a three-way intersection. And let me actually play with the paper a bit for this one, because that three-way intersection is not going to tell the whole story. Ooh, funky. So you can have it go down and do the three-way intersection, and then a bunch of other stuff is going to happen. And like I predicted, we're going to have one pleat going off this way and one pleat continuing in the same direction on the opposite side of the interaction as the single depth pleat. This one I don't think I've used before, which makes it fun. So I ended up with this kind of interaction, and do pardon the lawnmower noise in the background. There's also valley there. So you can see this area almost looks like the compound wrap, but it's all coming in and down and flat, and we're able to figure out how this has to happen based on the pleats that we laid out earlier. And like I said, this isn't one that I've come across. Doesn't mean that you won't. So that's the versions of the compound and triangle wraps that mix pleats, that have both single and double depth pleats. I also want to talk about dealing with open hexagon twists. So if you have 3 pleats running into an open hexagon twist, this is also the case for an open trapezoid. You can get these 3 pleats to lay down flat. And the trick is to treat it like a trapezoid, and then ignore the 3rd pleat for now. And you see how that looks like the standing form of a closed rhombus. We're going to pop this corner in like so, and act like we're putting in a or was it this corner? One of these. we're going to act like we're putting in, oh yeah, I should be holding it this way so the double depth pleat is coming towards me. And that's how it works. So we're going to act like we're working on a closed rhombus. And I did move some pleats around to get into this condition where we can pop that corner down to get into the compound wrap from this side. So on the other side, that's our standard compound wrap. And even from this side is that same crease pattern, just flipped over. But we're going to use that to enable us to have these 3 pleats going into a open hexagon twist laying down flat, which is super helpful in a lot of situations. So I can pop that down. And again, remember the balance of pleats. There are 3 single depth pleats and then 2 pleats that are merged together to form a double depth pleat down here. So when I pop that corner and let the valleys fall, that actually turns into an accordion pleat. Still 2 single depth pleats. We keep the balance of our setup. And so this is how you would wrap an open trapezoid or half of an open hexagon. And I would do this from that open hexagon-y side because it's so much easier to see on this side to pop the point and make the pleats fall where they have to, than trying to figure out on this side, like, okay, I'm doing a compound wrap and a triangle wrap on top of it, and it's just kind of a mess. So it's much easier, and then you can ignore what order you set up the pleats if you're setting it up from the side that looks like half of an open hexagon. The next one that I want to show you is if you're folding an open hexagon twist and you've got some really dense pleats that you're working with. And this one I did not practice in advance. Excuse me. Yeah, this tutorial is also brought to you by cough drops and bandages, because lots of things going on this week. Caught a cold from my husband, and then, well, before I caught a cold, I got some poison ivy from doing some landscaping. But anyways. And there's very distracting things going on outside my window as well, of course. So, if you have, and actually I'll just go ahead and set up the open hexagon, because there's a couple different things I want to illustrate with the hexagon. And one of those is the conditions where a triangle wrap will turn into a double depth pleat. So if I have this setup and I do a triangle wrap out here, then I get an accordion pleat. But if I move that one space closer, then the 2 pleats in the accordion merge and I end up with a double depth pleat over here. So that's something to be aware of when you're doing your wraps, that the wrap might interact with the rest of the twist and lead to a more complicated arrangement where some of the twist is sticking out over the edge of the wrapped pleat and adding another pleat, another spacing to the pleat depth in that direction. So that's one thing that can happen with a hexagon. And I'm looking over at my notes for today. This is also a good opportunity. I'll just go ahead and squash this hexagon, because if I have this triangle and then I go to put in the next triangle in here, one of the cool things with compound wraps is that because all of the pleats are still going out to the same locations, I can actually clip that end of the pleat in place and still pop this open, put in a compound wrap, and be good to go. So that clip stayed in place the whole time. That compound wrap is just a bit overpowered. And so you don't have to open up all your overlaps on the pleat further out to put in a compound wrap closer in. The other thing that I wanted to show is if you have an open hexagon right next to some of these dense pleats, this one doesn't need it, but I'm guessing the next one will. And this is often going to show up in flagstone situations. So let's say, and it might not be until the next ring around the center, so I'm going to go ahead and put a third hexagon over here, and that'll basically guarantee that I hit this. It's a kind of unique situation, but it's kind of the only way out of this unique situation, so I definitely want to show it today. I also show this move in the tutorial for counterbalanced. Okay, so once I have this hexagon in place, then the next hexagon I put in will use this special move. Which is that if I want to put a hexagon here, I can put in a triangle wrap there and a triangle wrap there, but this corner is just kind of left in the overlap. So I can get the rest of my pleats in place. And I'll zoom in here. So we've got a corner. It's going to be a 120-degree corner. It's got a pleat overlapping it. And so what I can do, usually the pleat out of this corner would go this way to correspond with this way and that way with the twist direction that I'm working in. But in this situation, I actually want to run my pleat out the opposite way. I'm just making sure that my other pleats are being well behaved here. I've got that wrap in place. I can pop this guy out and notice it's making a three-way intersection over here. That's going to add a grid spacing in this direction. And so I can get this hexagon twist in place, and this is completely flat foldable. I'm just going to make sure that that mountain fold actually landed on a grid line. And notice there's two grid spacings in here between the valley and the parallel mountain. So then when I go and flip over, I can squash this triangle, which wasn't involved in this mess. This triangle, I want to open up, and remember, I don't have to open that mess. I can just pop, pop. Might want to come open a little bit anyways. And again, we're really looking for balance in the pleats. And so notice I've done that compound wrap. This area is still a little wonky. So I'm going to make sure to have this pleat fold through fully flat, and then I can squash that triangle twist. So this is how I get clean triangle twists even in flagstone settings. And then coming back, we still need to resolve this area. So I can open up, there's my compound wrap from that latest triangle. Remember how I said that that mountain is going the wrong direction from that corner? Here's where I put it back in place. So it was going the wrong direction, hitting a three-way intersection, leading to a double depth pleat. Now with it going the right direction, this returns to a single depth pleat. And I can continue onwards with my pattern. Of course, then I do the triangle wrap here and we're back to a double depth pleat, but that is temporary. And likewise, triangle wrap here, the next pleat adds on, becomes double depth. And that is how, if I went back and redid my flagstone hexagons video, this is how I would recommend doing the ring out from the center instead of running your pleats through existing twists. So that is what I have for you today. We talked about using single and double depth pleats in the same wrap, both with compound wraps and triangle wraps. This one I use a lot, this one not so much. And then we talked about funky things that happen with a hexagon. We have the 3 pleats going into an open hexagon that you can flatten down. For example, if you have 3 pleats going into a hexagon and you want to use a pseudo tiling break, this is an excellent way to do it. We saw where, like in what situations when you do a triangle wrap, it'll end up having a double depth pleat coming out of it, even if you just fed single depth pleats into it. And we took a look at working with dense pleats, like these are all stuck on top of each other, and being able to get your twists in even with this high density, both from a hexagon point of view and from a triangle point of view. And that really covers your 2 corner types, your 2 sets of angles where pleats will interact. And so that's generalizable to rhombus, trapezoid, other kinds of twists. So those are the advanced wraps. that we're talking about today. And I look forward to seeing what kinds of wraps you come up with. Again, these are all based on, particularly the compound wraps, are based on that herringbone weave that I brought out in the beginner video, beginner wraps. And you can really play with all of the parameters in this pattern, including how long it takes to get from the top to the bottom, and yeah, how wide the pleats are that you're crossing. So these are some of the tips and tricks that I've picked up over the last couple years that have really helped me expand the variety of patterns that I'm able to fold and get into a lot of harder things with flagstone motifs too. So happy folding, and see you next time.